The notification that shattered Kate's world wasn't a text message or a missed call. It was a single glistening photo on a social media app. There he was, her husband, Luca, the man who'd kissed her pregnant belly just that morning, his hand now wrapped around the waist of a woman whose face was adored by millions. He'd left her for an influencer, but what he and his new muse didn't know, as they curated their perfect life on the world's hottest new app, was that the woman they'd discarded was about to become the one who owned their entire reality. This isn't a story about heartbreak. It's a story about what happens when a woman's pain is forged into power. The silence in their San Francisco apartment was the first thing that felt wrong. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a hollow and echoing void where the comfortable hum of a shared life used to be. Kate, 7 months pregnant and feeling every bit of it, lowered herself onto the plush grey sofa, her hand instinctively resting on the taut drum of her stomach. Luca was on a business trip, a last-minute all-important conference in Miami for the design firm he worked for. He'd been so apologetic, so full of promises to make it up to her, his kisses feeling urgent and distracted. Kate and Luca had been the picture of modern success. She was a brilliant data analyst for a major tech firm, before going on early maternity leave, a woman who saw the world in patterns and probabilities. He was the charming, handsome graphic designer, the dreamer to her pragmatist. They'd met at a cafe, a classic story of him sketching her on a napkin. Their love felt like a perfectly designed user experience, intuitive, beautiful, and seamless, until it wasn't. The past 6 months, something had shifted. Luca had become obsessed with a new social media platform called Aura. It was more than just filters. Aura used a sophisticated AI to create entire lifestyle templates. Users could upload a simple photo, and the app would transform it into a scene of impossible glamour. A dreary Tuesday morning could look like a sun-drenched brunch in Santorini. A selfie in a drab apartment could become a candid laugh in a Parisian loft. It was the ultimate engine of curated fantasy, and its biggest star was an influencer named Chloe Vance. Chloe was Aura's queen. With 15 million followers, her life was a cascade of perfect moments, each one processed through Aura's signature glow. She was perpetually on vacation, perpetually draped in designer clothes, perpetually in love with the camera. Luca was mesmerized. At first it was professional admiration. "Look at her branding aims," he'd say, scrolling endlessly through her feed. "She's not just a person. She's a product. It's genius." Soon his admiration soured into a strange, distant longing. He started using Aura for his own design portfolio, trying to capture that same elusive gloss. He was on his phone constantly, his thumb stroking the screen as if trying to absorb Chloe's life through the glass. When Kate would gently ask him to be present, he'd snap, "This is my work, Kate. It's about staying relevant." The business trip to Miami was the culmination of this growing distance. He'd packed in a hurry, his movements jerky and avoidant. Now the silence he'd left behind felt heavy with unspoken words. Kate tried to busy herself folding and refolding tiny onesies in the nursery, the scent of fresh paint and new furniture doing little to soothe her unease. The crib, a sleek Scandinavian design Luca had insisted on, stood half-assembled in the corner, a monument to his unfinished promises. That evening, seeking a mindless distraction, she opened Instagram. It was a mistake. Her feed, usually a mix of friends' babies and home decor, was now dominated by Chloe Vance. Luca, in his obsession, had engaged with so much of her content that the algorithm had decided Kate must be a fan too. She was about to scroll past when a new post from Chloe, uploaded just 1 hour ago, froze the blood in her veins. It was a picture, but it was rendered through Aura to look like a still from a romantic film. Chloe Vance, stunning in a white linen dress, was laughing, her head thrown back. Her arm was linked with a man whose back was mostly to the camera, but Kate didn't need to see his face. She knew the line of his shoulders, the way his dark hair curled at the nape of his neck, the familiar grey t-shirt she had bought him. They were standing on a balcony overlooking the ocean, the sunset casting them in hues of orange and pink. The location tag was simple: South Beach, Miami. The caption, however, was the killing blow. Sometimes you have to break the rules to find your true north. So grateful for this unexpected chapter. But it wasn't the caption that made Kate drop her phone. It was the top comment liked by thousands from a verified account. Luca's account. It read, "My true north is you." The world didn't shatter. It simply dissolved. The walls of the apartment seemed to melt away. The floor fell from beneath her, and the only thing holding her together was the child kicking insistently in her womb. For a moment she couldn't breathe. It was a physical pain, a crushing weight on her chest that felt like a heart attack. She was a data analyst. She dealt in facts, in verifiable truths. This was a data point for which she had no model. She picked up her phone with a trembling hand. She clicked on Luca's profile. He had posted a new picture too, also through Aura. It was him smiling with the same ocean background. The caption, "Starting over." He had untagged himself from all of their old photos together. Years of their life, their wedding, their travels, their pregnancy announcement, all gone. In their place was this single glossy image of his new beginning. She dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. His familiar, cheerful voice filled the silent apartment. "Hey, you've reached Luca. Leave a message." She didn't leave one. She sent a text, her fingers clumsy and numb. "Miami." The reply came back almost instantly, a single cowardly sentence that bifurcated her life into a before and an after. "I'm sorry, Kate. I'm in love with her. I'm not coming home." There was no explanation, no phone call, just a text message as impersonal as a shipping notification. The man she had built a life with, the man who was the father of her unborn child, had erased her for a woman he knew only through a screen. The next few days were a blur of unimaginable pain. She called his parents, who were horrified, but unsurprised. "He's always been chasing something." "Kate," his mother had wept over the phone, "we just never thought he'd do this to you." His friends stopped answering her calls, clearly having chosen a side. The half-assembled crib became an object of torment. Every corner of the apartment held a ghost. A week later, a sterile, legal-looking envelope arrived. Inside were divorce papers already signed by Luca, delivered by a courier. He was waiving his rights to the apartment, which was in her name, and making a single insulting offer of a lump sum payment. It was a clean break, a transaction. He was closing a business deal, not ending a marriage. The true torture, however, was Aura. She couldn't look away. It was a form of self-flagellation. Every day, Luca and Chloe posted their new life. They called themselves #Lio. They documented everything through the app's romanticized lens: their first brunch, as an official couple holding hands on the beach, Luca surprising Chloe with a puppy. It was a fire hose of manufactured bliss, and the world was drinking it in. Their follower counts exploded. They were the internet's new favorite couple, praised for their bravery and authenticity. Comments poured in by the thousands. So happy you found real love. You two are glowing. Forget the haters, live your truth. Kate was the hater. The forgotten, pregnant, inconvenient truth. She read articles about them in online celebrity magazines. One headline read, "The Knew-It Couple, How Luca Reynolds Left a Toxic Situation to Find True Love with Chloe Vance." Toxic. The word was a knife. In an interview, Chloe spoke vaguely about Luca's past. He was in a relationship that was holding him back creatively and emotionally, she said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. He needed to be with someone who understood the pressures of living a public life, someone who was on his level. It was a hard decision, but it was for his own well-being. Luca in the same article was quoted as saying, "I realized I was living a life based on someone else's expectations. I was suffocating. Chloe, she sees me. The real me." Kate looked down at her swollen belly, at the stretch marks mapping her skin, at the life she was growing inside her. The life he had co-created and then abandoned. He wasn't suffocating. He was a coward who had mistaken the validation of strangers for love and the glow of an AI filter for happiness. It was during one of these late-night doom-scrolling sessions, tears streaming down her face as she looked at a picture of Luca and Chloe kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower, a trip she and Luca had been planning for their baby moon, that something inside her finally snapped. The grief, the humiliation, the incandescent rage, it all coalesced into a single sharp point of clarity. He thought he had seen the real her. He hadn't. He had only seen the wife, the partner, the accommodating other half. He had never seen the woman who had put herself through grad school, the analyst who could find the narrative in a sea of chaotic data, the survivor who had pulled herself out of poverty after her parents' death. He had left her for a fantasy, a beautiful, shallow, AI-generated fantasy. And the entire world was cheering them on, all because of an app. The app. Aura. Kate wiped her tears. Her hand, which had been resting on her stomach, balled into a fist. They had used Aura to build their perfect world on the ashes of hers. They thought they were the stars of the show. An idea cold and brilliant and terrifying began to form in the analytical part of her brain, the part that saw patterns, the part that understood systems. An idea that had nothing to do with heartbreak and everything to do with power. She wouldn't just delete the app. She wouldn't just block them. That was their game, their world. She was going to change the world itself. She was going to buy it. The decision, once it crystallized, was like a splash of ice water. The fog of grief began to recede, replaced by a chilling, razor-sharp focus. For weeks, Kate had been a passenger in her own life, carried along by tides of sorrow and betrayal. Now she was grabbing the wheel. But the thought was on its face insane. Buy Aura. The app was a cultural phenomenon. It was likely worth hundreds of millions, if not billions. She was a single, unemployed mother-to-be living off savings. The absurdity of it almost made her laugh, a raw, humorless sound that startled her in the quiet apartment. But the thought wouldn't leave. It burrowed into her mind and set up camp. It was the only thing that felt like a path forward, a way to reclaim the narrative that had been stolen from her. Her first move was practical. She scheduled an emergency appointment with her obstetrician. If she was going to declare war, she needed to know her own supply lines were secure. The baby had to be okay. In the sterile examination room, the cool gel on her belly, she held her breath. Then the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of a tiny, ferocious heartbeat filled the room. Strong, steady, 150 beats per minute. "Everything looks perfect, Kate," her doctor. A kind woman named Dr. Chen said with a warm smile, "This little one is a fighter." Lying there, listening to the sound of her child's heart, Kate made a silent promise. "I will fight for you. I will not let you be born into a story where your mother was a victim." That resolve carried her home. She sat at her sleek iMac, the one Luca had always complained was too corporate for their apartment, and began to work. Her fingers, which had grown clumsy with grief, now flew across the keyboard with their old confidence. She wasn't just a heartbroken ex-wife anymore. She was Kate Reed, data analyst, and she was going to do what she did best: research. She started not with Aura, but with her own finances. She pulled up her accounts, her savings, her 401k. It was a respectable amount, enough to live on for a year or two, if she was careful, but not nearly enough to buy a lemonade stand, let alone a tech giant. The reality of her situation was stark. The plan was impossible. Defeated, she opened the digital folder labeled Personal Documents. It was a morbidly organized collection of her life, her birth certificate, her degree, her marriage license, now a worthless piece of paper. And in a subfolder titled Eleanor, there was her grandmother's will. Eleanor Reed had been the true north of Kate's life. A whip-smart, no-nonsense woman who had raised Kate after her parents died in a car crash when she was 10. Eleanor wasn't a woman of great wealth, but she was savvy. A high school math teacher, she had a preternatural gift for understanding the stock market. "It's just patterns, sweetheart," she'd say. "Human fear and human greed written in numbers." When Eleanor passed away 2 years ago, she had left Kate her house, which Kate had sold to buy the San Francisco apartment, and her stock portfolio. The portfolio was managed by a boutique firm in Boston, and Eleanor had left strict instructions in her will. "To my dearest Kate," the letter read, "this is not for frivolity. This is for a foundation. For a moment, when you need to build something for yourself on your own terms. Do not touch it until you know with every fiber of your being that the time is right." Kate had respected her grandmother's wishes. She'd glanced at the portfolio statements when they arrived, saw that it was mostly invested in a single obscure tech company called Althea Innovations, and filed them away. It was her nest egg for a distant hypothetical future. With a sense of dread and curiosity, she logged into the portfolio management portal for the first time. She braced herself for a modest sum, maybe $100,000 if she was lucky. The number that loaded on the screen made her gasp. $14,732,841.9. She stared, blinking. It had to be a mistake, a glitch, a typo. She refreshed the page. The number remained fluctuating by a few dollars as the market ticked. She quickly searched for Althea Innovations. The company wasn't obscure anymore. Althea specialized in AI-driven data processing and machine learning algorithms. 6 months ago, they had signed a massive exclusive contract with the Department of Defense, and their stock had skyrocketed by over 2,000%. Eleanor Reed, the quiet math teacher, had seen a pattern no one else did. She had invested her life savings into a small company she believed in, and her bet had paid off on a scale that was almost incomprehensible. Kate felt a wave of dizziness. $14 million. It was a life-altering, world-bending amount of money. Her grandmother's legacy wasn't just a safety net, it was a catapult. The impossible, insane idea of buying Aura suddenly felt plausible. Her research shifted gears. Now, with the specter of capital behind her, she wasn't just fantasizing. She was conducting due diligence. She dove into Aura. Not the front-end consumer-facing app, but the business behind it. The parent company was called Elysian Labs, Inc. It was founded 2 years ago by a trio of Stanford graduates. They had created the brilliant core technology, the AI, that made Aura so addictive. She spent days digging using her analyst skills to scrape public records, tech journals, and financial news archives. She found interviews with the founders where they boasted about user growth and engagement metrics. But Kate knew that vanity metrics often hid ugly truths. She looked deeper, searching for financial statements, for SEC filings, for any hint of their actual business health. What she found was a classic Silicon Valley story. Elysian Labs had a revolutionary product, but zero business acumen. They had burned through their seed funding and Series A funding at an alarming rate, spending lavishly on marketing and perks to attract talent. They had prioritized growth over profit, assuming they could secure a massive Series B round of funding to keep the lights on. But the tech market had cooled in the last quarter. Investors were getting skittish, demanding clear paths to profitability. According to an article in a niche tech business journal, Elysian Labs' proposed Series B funding round had just fallen through. The investors had backed out, citing concerns about the company's high burn rate and lack of a sustainable revenue model beyond the vague promise of future ad sales. Elysian Labs was bleeding money. They were a rocket ship that was running out of fuel, hurtling towards a crash. To the public, to Luca and Chloe, Aura was a glittering success. But Kate, looking at the data, saw the truth. Aura was a damsel in distress, desperately in need of a savior. This was her opening. She picked up the phone and called the number on her grandmother's portfolio statement. A crisp, professional voice answered. "Thorne and Associates, Marcus Thorne speaking." "Mr. Thorne," Kate said, her own voice steady and clear, a stark contrast to the trembling woman she had been a week ago. "My name is Kate Reed. I'm Eleanor Reed's granddaughter. I believe you manage her portfolio." "Kate, of course. My deepest condolences again on your grandmother's passing. She was a remarkable woman," Marcus said warmly. "I was wondering when I might hear from you. That Althea stock has done, well, it's done wonders." "Yes," Kate said, cutting to the chase. "It has, and I want to liquidate a significant portion of it. I have an acquisition target in mind." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "An acquisition target?" Marcus sounded intrigued. His professional curiosity piqued. "This is unexpected. May I ask what company you're looking at?" Kate took a deep breath. "Elysian Labs, the company that owns the app Aura." The silence on the other end was longer this time. Kate could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the surprise, the calculation, the assessment of her sanity. "Well," Marcus finally said, a new note of respect in his voice. "That is a bold move, Miss Reed. A very bold move indeed. Tell me everything." For the next hour, Kate laid out her research. She talked about Elysian's burn rate, their failed funding round, their brilliant but mismanaged technology. She spoke not with emotion, but with the cold, hard logic of a seasoned analyst. She wasn't a woman scorned. She was an investor who had identified an undervalued asset with immense potential. Marcus was impressed. "Your grandmother was a shrewd woman," he said. "It appears she passed that trait on to you. An all-cash offer to a company in their position would be incredibly tempting. They'd be able to pay off their debts, their initial investors would get a decent exit, and the founders would walk away with millions. It's a golden parachute when they're about to crash into the mountain." "Exactly," Kate said. "But it has to be completely anonymous. They cannot know who the buyer is. My name cannot appear anywhere." "That's standard practice for a hostile-style takeover, even a friendly one. We'll set up a shell corporation, a holding company. It will be completely firewalled. They will have no idea who is writing the check," Marcus assured her. "Kate, this is a predator's move. Are you ready for that?" Kate looked at the half-assembled crib in the corner of the room. She thought of Luca's comment on Chloe's photo. "My true north is you." She thought of the life growing inside her, the tiny, resilient heartbeat. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice like steel, "I have never been more ready in my life." The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Under the expert guidance of Marcus Thorne, Kate transformed from a private citizen into a silent, formidable corporate raider. Marcus, a seasoned veteran of Boston's cutthroat financial world, was invigorated by the challenge. He saw in Kate a reflection of her grandmother's quiet tenacity, and it was his honor to be her field marshal. They established a holding company, a deliberately nondescript entity named North Star Holdings, LLC. The irony was a private, bitter joke for Kate. Luca had found his true north in a fleeting fantasy. She would build an empire under hers. Marcus and his legal team handled the paperwork, creating a labyrinthine structure of ownership that made the ultimate beneficiary, Kate, utterly untraceable. While the lawyers built the fortress, Kate worked tirelessly from her apartment, which she now referred to as her war room. The nursery door was closed. The baby clothes were put away. Her focus was absolute. She and Marcus's team of analysts conducted a deep-dive valuation of Elysian Labs. They built financial models, projected user decline scenarios, and calculated the precise amount of debt the company was carrying. They discovered the situation was even more precarious than the news articles suggested. Elysian Labs had taken out a high-interest bridge loan to cover payroll just last month. They had 30 days to repay it, or they would be in default, which would trigger a cascade of legal and financial calamities. They were not just running out of fuel. The engines were on fire. "They're desperate," Marcus said during one of their daily calls. "Their backs are against the wall. The founders are probably at each other's throats, and their investors are screaming for their money back. This is the perfect time to strike." The strategy was simple and brutal, an all-cash offer that was just high enough to be an irresistible lifeline. It wasn't a generous offer that reflected Aura's cultural cachet, but a predator's price that reflected its dire financial reality. They would offer $35 million. $20 million would go to paying off their debts and early-stage investors, Marcus explained. The remaining $15 million would be split between the 3 founders, $5 million each, for a 30-year-old that's walk away and never work again money. It's an offer they can't refuse. Kate felt a pang of something complex, not guilt, but a heavy sense of consequence. She was about to irrevocably change the lives of dozens of employees of 3 young founders who had, despite their flaws, created something remarkable. But then she'd open Aura. She had to for market research, and she'd see them. Leo. Thriving. They were in Bali now. A post showed them on a swing overlooking a lush jungle, their bodies tanned, their smiles blinding. Luca had his hand on Chloe's flat stomach. The caption read, "Building our future one perfect moment at a time." The post had 2 million likes. Any flicker of doubt, Kate felt, was instantly extinguished by a wildfire of resolve. They were building their future on the wreckage of hers. The $35 million offer was not an act of aggression. It was an act of cosmic rebalancing. Through Marcus North Star, Holdings made its formal unsolicited offer to the board of Elysian Labs. The reaction was instantaneous. For 3 days, there was radio silence. Kate imagined the frantic meetings, the shouting matches, the sleepless nights for Elysian's CEO, a young man named Kevin Lynn. She could picture him staring at the offer on his screen, a deal from a ghost company that would solve all his problems, but would mean giving up his creation. On the 4th day, Marcus called. "They've blinked," he said, unable to hide the excitement in his voice. "They've hired an investment bank to represent them. They're ready to negotiate. Kevin Lynn is demanding to know who North Star Holdings is." "And what did you tell them?" Kate asked, her heart pounding. "I told them North Star is a private family fund with a deep interest in emerging AI technology, and that the principal values privacy above all else. I told them any attempt to uncover the owner's identity would result in the immediate withdrawal of the offer. They can have the money, or they can have their curiosity, not both." The negotiation was a swift and brutal affair, handled entirely by Marcus. Elysian Labs countered with $50 million. Marcus, on Kate's instruction, didn't budge. He simply resent the original offer with a note, "This offer is final and expires in 48 hours. It was a high-stakes game of chicken. Kate didn't sleep for those 2 days. She paced her apartment, her hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick as if sensing her agitation. This was it, the moment of truth. Was her analysis correct? Was their desperation greater than their pride? With 3 hours to go before the deadline, the acceptance came through. They had folded. Elysian Labs, the parent company of the cultural sensation Aura, had agreed to be acquired by North Star Holdings for $35 million. The moment the signed papers landed in her inbox, Kate didn't feel triumph. She felt a profound, unnerving calm. The world had tilted on its axis, and she was the one who had pushed it. She walked into the nursery and opened the door. The afternoon light streamed in, illuminating the half-built crib. She looked at it not as a symbol of abandonment, but as a project waiting to be completed. The deal closed a week later. The money, a figure so large it looked like a phone number, was transferred from her grandmother's legacy account. In return, a set of digital keys were handed over. Passwords, admin access, full unadulterated control of the entire Aura platform. She was in. Luca and Chloe, of course, knew nothing. They were in a different world, a world of likes and shares. They probably saw the news briefs in the tech journals. Struggling Elysian Labs, acquired by mystery firm North Star Holdings. They would have scrolled past it without a second thought, more concerned with their engagement metrics than with the dry realities of corporate acquisitions. They had no idea that the mystery firm was the woman they had so casually destroyed. For her first act as the new owner, Kate didn't log into the system from her laptop. She did it from her phone. She opened the Aura app, the same app that had been her tormentor. She navigated to the admin portal, a back door invisible to normal users, and entered the credentials Marcus had given her. A new screen loaded. It was the God view, the control panel, a dashboard showing real-time user activity server loads and revenue streams or lack thereof. And most importantly, it showed her the algorithm. The complex secret code that decided who got famous and who remained invisible. The code that had crowned Chloe Vance a queen. It was all there, laid bare before her. A series of weighted variables, virality score, engagement velocity, influencer tier priority. Chloe Vance, and by extension Luca Reynolds, were hard-coded at the top with a Tier 1 priority flag. The algorithm was designed to push their content to the top of everyone's feed, guaranteeing them millions of views whether their content was good or not. Their success wasn't just organic. It was manufactured by the system itself. Kate's finger hovered over the screen. She could delete their accounts. She could ban them from the platform. With a single tap, she could wipe them from the digital universe they held so dear. It would be so easy, so swift. But that was too simple. It was a warrior's move, not a strategist's. Deleting them would make them martyrs. They would go to other platforms, crying censorship, and their fame would only grow. No, revenge wasn't about a single satisfying blow. It was about a slow, deliberate, and undeniable demonstration of power. She wasn't going to ban them. She was going to make them irrelevant. With a cool precision, she navigated to their user profiles within the admin panel. She saw their priority flag. Influencer / tier priority. 1. She smiled a thin, cold smile. She selected the line of code. She didn't delete it. She just changed one single character. Influencer tier priority equals 0. She hit save. And just like that, the gods of the algorithm fell silent. The king and queen were now in the eyes of the machine that had made them just commoners. The effect was not immediate. An algorithm shift is not like flipping a switch. It's like changing the course of a river. For the first few days, nothing seemed different. Luca and Chloe, now living in a glass-walled rental in the Hollywood Hills, continued to post their aura-filtered fantasies. A trip to a vineyard in Napa, a candid moment of them laughing while making pasta a shot of Chloe meditating at sunrise. Kate watched not with the pained obsession of a victim, but with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. She had the master dashboard open on her second monitor at all times. She could see every metric, every data point. And she began to notice the subtle changes. Their new posts were getting slightly fewer likes in the first hour. The comment velocity was down by 15%. Before the Aura algorithm would have force-fed their content onto millions of For You pages, now their content had to perform on its own merits to get seen. And their merits, stripped of their artificial algorithmic boost, were proving to be remarkably thin. A week later, Chloe posted a meticulously staged photo of herself in a bubble bath surrounded by candles. In the old Auraverse, this would have been an easy 1.5 million likes. Kate watched the numbers in real time. The post struggled to hit 400,000. The first crack appeared in the comments section. "Is it me, or is Chloe's content getting kinda boring?" read one highly liked comment. Another said, "I feel like I've seen this exact photo 100 times. Chloe, who meticulously curated her comments, deleted them. But more popped up. The tide of public opinion, no longer guided by Aura's heavy hand, was starting to turn. Luca and Chloe noticed the dip. Their response was predictable. They doubled down. Their content became more frantic, more desperate for attention. They staged a fake argument and a dramatic makeup on Instagram stories. They did a tell-all YouTube video about the pressures of fame. It came off as narcissistic and whiny. Their engagement dipped further. Kate, meanwhile, was doing more than just watching. She was learning. As the sole owner, she had access to every line of code, every developer note. She spent her days understanding the intricate architecture of the platform she now controlled. She saw its flaws, its vulnerabilities, but also its immense, untapped potential. The AI was brilliant. It was just being used for the shallowest purpose imaginable. She also started subtly changing other parts of the algorithm. She instructed the system to deprioritize overly processed fantasy life content. Instead, she tweaked the variables to favor photos and videos that were tagged with things like real life, no filter, hashed mental health journey, and authenticity. She implemented a small, almost invisible boost for accounts with fewer than 10,000 followers who were getting genuine, high-quality engagement. Slowly, the entire ecosystem of Aura began to change. The For You pages, once a homogeneous stream of influencer perfection, started to fill with more diverse, more relatable content. A young mother sharing her struggles with postpartum depression, a teacher posting funny, unedited videos from his classroom, an artist showing the messy, paint-splattered process behind her work. These new creators, the ones Kate's new algorithm favored, began to rise. Aura started to feel less like a magazine of impossible lives and more like a community. The tech press started noticing. Aura's surprising shift towards authenticity, read one headline. Is the influencer bubble finally popping on Aura, read another. The app's user growth, which had started to stagnate, ticked upward again. People were responding to the change. Kate's personal life was changing too. She had found a new obstetrician closer to her apartment, a kind, reassuring man named Dr. Ben Carter. He was warm and funny with laugh lines around his eyes. During a checkup, he noticed her exhausted expression. "Long day?" he asked as he measured the baby's heartbeat. "You could say that," Kate replied with a wry smile. "Just a lot of corporate restructuring." "Ah," he said, nodding sagely. "My sister's a CEO. I know that look. Don't forget to take care of the most important startup you're running." He gestured towards her belly. "This one's funding is entirely dependent on you." His genuine care was a balm on her still healing wounds. She found herself looking forward to her appointments, to their brief, easy conversations. It was a stark contrast to the transactional, performative nature of the world she was secretly manipulating. Ben saw her as Kate, a smart, tired, expectant mother. Not a victim, not a predator, just a person. The unraveling of Lio, meanwhile, was accelerating. Their numbers were in a free fall. Having built their entire brand on Aura, they had nowhere else to go. Their attempts to replicate their success on TikTok and Instagram fell flat. They were an Aura phenomenon, and their native environment had become hostile. Desperation led them to make a fatal error. They started buying followers, a cardinal sin in the influencer world. But Kate, the owner of the platform, could see it all. On her dashboard, she saw the sudden inorganic spike in their follower count, all from botted accounts in Southeast Asia. It was pathetic. She didn't even have to do anything. Other users savvy to these tactics noticed immediately. A tech blogger using an analytics tool published an expose titled, "Have Chloe Vance and Luca Reynolds Been Faking Their Fame?" The article went viral. The hashtags #LioIsALie and #BotScandal started trending on Aura. The public backlash was savage. The couple who had been praised for their authenticity were now exposed as frauds. Their comment sections became a dumpster fire of mockery and outrage. Their big-name sponsors, the ones who had flocked to them months ago, began to pull out, citing morals clauses in their contracts. A teeth-whitening brand, a fast fashion label, a meal kit delivery service, all publicly severed ties. The financial pressure mounted. The glass-walled Hollywood house disappeared from their posts, replaced by a generic-looking apartment. Their fights, once staged for drama, were now apparently real. Paparazzi, who now smelled blood in the water, caught them arguing in a parking lot. The photos were raw and ugly, a world away from their carefully filtered aura posts. Luca looked stressed and haggard. Chloe looked furious. One evening, Kate was reviewing a proposal for a new Aura feature, a tool to help connect users with mental health resources, when a notification popped up on her work screen. It was an internal alert from the customer service department. Subject: urgent, escalated inquiry from high-profile user. Kate opened the email. It was a long, rambling, furious message from Chloe Vance. She was demanding to speak to the new owner of Aura. She claimed her account had been shadow banned and that the company was deliberately sabotaging her career. She threatened legal action, public exposure, and every other form of retribution she could think of. "My fiancé, Luca Reynolds, is a celebrated designer," she wrote, "and we have been loyal champions of your platform. This unprofessional treatment is unacceptable. We demand a meeting with the CEO of North Star Holdings to discuss a path forward." Kate leaned back in her chair. Her baby kicked a gentle but firm reminder. A path forward. They wanted a path forward. It was time. She forwarded the email to Marcus Thorne. Her instructions were simple. "Arrange the meeting. My boardroom. Next Tuesday." The headquarters of North Star Holdings, and by extension Aura, was not the trendy open-plan loft one might expect from a tech company. On Kate's instruction, Marcus had leased the top floor of a stark, imposing skyscraper in the heart of San Francisco's financial district. The aesthetic was deliberate, old money, quiet power, and impenetrable steel. The boardroom was Kate's stage. It was a vast, intimidating space, dominated by a long, dark mahogany table. One wall was a floor-to-ceiling window, offering a panoramic, godlike view of the city and the bay. The other walls were bare, save for a single, massive screen, currently dark. Kate arrived an hour early. She was now nearly 9 months pregnant, and she moved with a slow, deliberate grace. She wore a simple, elegant black maternity dress. No power suit, no armor. Her presence was her power. She stood by the window looking down at the traffic crawling below, feeling the baby move within her. She was calm. The chaotic emotions of the past few months had been distilled into a single purpose. This was not about revenge. It was about closing a loop, about demonstrating a fact that real life, with all its pain and messiness, would always triumph over a curated fantasy. Marcus met her in the boardroom. He looked at her, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "Are you sure you want to do this face-to-face, Kate? I can handle it." "I'm sure," she said, her voice soft but firm. "This is my story. I'm going to be the one to write the ending." At precisely 10 a.m. the door opened. A junior executive showed in Chloe Vance and Luca Reynolds. The sight of them in the flesh was jarring. They were smaller somehow than their digital avatars. Chloe was dressed in a tight, expensive-looking blazer, her face a mask of professionally applied makeup, but there were dark circles under her eyes. She radiated a tense, defiant energy. Luca was a ghost. His trendy clothes hung on a frame that had lost weight. His charming smile was gone, replaced by a haggard, anxious expression. He avoided looking around the room, his eyes fixed on the floor. Then he saw Kate standing by the window. His face went white. He stopped dead, his mouth falling open slightly. He looked from her to her swollen belly, then back to her face. The color drained from his cheeks. Recognition, shock, and a dawning, sickening horror played out across his features. Chloe, who had been striding towards the head of the table as if to claim it, noticed Luca's paralysis. "What is it?" she snapped, irritated. Then she followed his gaze. Her reaction was different. There was no horror, only pure, unadulterated confusion, quickly followed by a flash of contempt. "Kate, what the hell are you doing here? Are you the secretary?" Kate didn't answer. She simply walked towards the head of the table, the seat Chloe had been about to take, and sat down. Marcus took the seat at her right. "Chloe." "Luca," Kate said, her voice echoing slightly in the vast, silent room. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Luca stumbled into a chair, his eyes still locked on Kate's face. Chloe remained standing, her arms crossed. "I don't understand. We're here to see the CEO of North Star Holdings." "What is this?" "You are," Kate said calmly. "I am the sole owner and CEO of North Star Holdings. I acquired Elysian Labs 3 months ago. Welcome to my company." The silence that followed was absolute. Chloe's jaw tightened, her perfectly glossed lips pressed into a thin line. The contempt in her eyes was replaced by a look of disbelief and then a flicker of fear. Luca looked like he was going to be physically sick. He finally tore his gaze away from Kate and stared at the polished surface of the table as if it were a life raft. "You—" Chloe finally spat out a harsh, incredulous laugh, escaping her. "You bought Aura how?" "My grandmother was a very wise woman," Kate said simply. She gestured to the large screen on the wall. "But we're not here to discuss my finances. We're here to discuss yours." With a tap on her tablet, the screen flickered to life. It displayed Aura's master dashboard. It was a sea of data charts and graphs. To Luca and Chloe, it would have been incomprehensible. But Kate knew it was the story of their lives. "Let's talk about your brand," Kate began, her voice taking on the crisp, analytical tone of her old job. "This graph shows your engagement metrics over the past year." A jagged line appeared on the screen. It shot up dramatically around the time Luca had left her, then plummeted 3 months ago. "This spike," she said, pointing a laser from her tablet, "is where the Elysian Labs algorithm was manually coded to give your accounts Tier 1 priority. Your fame wasn't earned, it was assigned." She switched to another screen, showing a world map covered in red dots. "And this is your follower base, or what's left of it. As you can see, 47% of your followers are bots originating from click farms in Dhaka and Manila purchased on—" She paused, looking at her notes. "The 17th of last month, a direct violation of our terms of service." She brought up their most recent posts. "Your content's performance when stripped of artificial priority and fake followers is in the bottom percentile of our user base. To be blunt, your brand is worthless." Chloe was shaking her head, her face pale beneath her tan. "You did this. You sabotaged us." "No," Kate said, her voice devoid of malice. It was the voice of pure fact. "I didn't sabotage you. I restored neutrality. I took away your cheat codes. I created a level playing field, and on it you failed. Because what you built was never real. It was a fantasy propped up by a system I now control." Finally, Luca spoke, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Kate, I didn't know." Kate turned her full attention to him for the first time. She looked at him, the father of her child, the man who had shattered her world with a text message. There was no hatred in her eyes, only a profound, weary pity. "You didn't know," she repeated softly. "You didn't know that leaving your pregnant wife for a woman you'd only just met was wrong. You didn't know that building a new life on a foundation of lies and curated photos might be unsustainable. I'm sorry." He choked out, tears welling in his eyes. "Ames, I am so sorry. I was lost. I made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did, Kate agreed. And now you have to live with it. She turned her gaze back to Chloe, who was now staring at her with pure, venomous hatred. So what now? Chloe demanded. Are you going to delete our accounts? Is that what this is all about? Petty revenge. Kate almost smiled. It was so much bigger than that. Deleting you would be a waste of server space, she said coolly. Your accounts will remain active. You are free to post whatever you like. But you will be subject to the same algorithm as every other user. You will have to find out for the first time if anyone is actually interested in what you have to say. She stood up, her movement commanding the room. But this meeting isn't just about you. It's about the future of this platform. Aura became a tool for envy and illusion, and I am changing that. The screen behind her changed again. It now showed mock-ups of a new app interface. It was cleaner, warmer. The focus was on community, on connection, on authenticity. I am officially announcing the Aura Authenticity Initiative. We are partnering with the National Center for Mental Health to integrate resources into the app. We are launching a creator fund, the Eleanor Reed Grant, to provide capital to small independent artists and storytellers who are focused on genuine, unfiltered content. 10% of all future profits from this company will be donated to charities supporting single mothers and their children. She looked directly at Luca, her voice unwavering. This platform will no longer be a celebration of the fantasies people escape to. It will be a celebration of the real lives they actually lead. The messy ones, the hard ones, the beautiful, authentic ones. She had taken their weapon, the engine of their fame, and her pain, and she had reforged it into a shield for people like her. The meeting is over, Kate said. The executive assistant will validate your parking. Chloe was speechless, her rage rendering her mute. Luca just sat there broken. As a security guard escorted them out of the boardroom, Luca looked back one last time, his face a mask of regret and awe. He wasn't looking at his ex-wife. He was looking at a force of nature he had foolishly underestimated. When they were gone, Marcus turned to Kate. That, he said, was the most brutal and elegant takedown I have ever witnessed. Kate walked back to the window, placing a hand on her belly. She watched two tiny figures get into a cab far below. She didn't feel a rush of victory or a thrill of revenge. She just felt peaceful. The loop was closed. The story was hers again. 2 weeks later, Kate gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Eleanor. In the end, this was never a story about getting even. It was a story about getting whole. Kate didn't just buy an app. She bought back her own narrative. She took the very tool that was used to discard her and transformed it into a platform for authenticity and a force for good, building a legacy for her daughter on the foundations of her own resilience. Luca and Chloe learned the hard way that a life built on filters is bound to fade, while a life built on truth, however difficult, is the only one that lasts. What do you think? Was Kate's move an act of brilliant revenge or a masterclass in business? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you were moved by this story of strength and transformation, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real-life stories of incredible people.
Mistress drugged the millionaire to scandalize him, but his pregnant wife set a trap to expose her. Welcome, dear viewers, to a story that weaves betrayal, desire, and cunning into a web of unforgettable intrigue. Today, we delve into the hidden world of high society, where wealth sparkles like diamonds, yet secrets fester beneath polished smiles. Our protagonist is Edward Harrington, a millionaire businessman admired for his success and envied for his fortune. At the heart of this tangled drama stands a mysterious mistress, Veronica Jones, whose desperation drives her to commit the unthinkable. Opposite her is Samantha Harrington, Edward's devoted wife, who suspects foul play. Together, they become entangled in a high-stakes game of deceit, power, and ultimate revelation. Edward Harrington was, by every outward standard, living the dream. Tall, with the tailored suits of a refined businessman and the polished manners inherited from his aristocratic maternal family. He was the kind of man who commanded respect as soon as he entered a room. His fortune, amassed through a series of innovative tech, startups and savvy real estate investments, allowed him the lifestyle most could only imagine. He had a hillside mansion in Malibu, a brownstone in Manhattan, and a private villa in Tuscany. He was, in many ways, emblematic of success. Edward's wife, Samantha Harrington, often called Sam by her closest friends, was equally admired. A former art gallery curator with a keen eye for detail, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her worth. Her long auburn hair and graceful poise completed the picture of a perfect power couple by Edward's side. She was the one who could charm anyone into conversation at society galas, who could effortlessly blend into any gathering while radiating warmth that drew people in. For many years their marriage was strong. They talked in the evenings over a glass of wine, joked about the silly antics of their dog, Winston, and planned philanthropic initiatives together. Samantha's passion for art and Edward's for technology fused in a philanthropic mission to sponsor underprivileged children in the arts. They donated a grand sum annually to the esteemed Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, often in secret, never seeking publicity. However, behind the gilded edges of Edward's life, a hidden crack was beginning to form. Despite Samantha's unwavering support and his outwardly impeccable reputation, Edward had been courting disaster in the form of a beautiful and ambitious mistress named Veronica Jones. Veronica was a striking brunette with high cheekbones, a commanding gaze, and an irresistible charm. She had worked as a public relations consultant for one of Edward's smaller tech ventures, forging a connection with him that quickly crossed professional boundaries. She managed to ignite in Edward a desire for excitement, a spark he feared had gone stale in his carefully ordered life. At first, it was harmless flirting during corporate events, but soon Edward found himself meeting Veronica for coffee, then for lunch, eventually for late-night rendezvous that turned physical. He rationalized these secret excursions. He and Samantha were too busy drifting apart, right? Veronica promised something new and thrilling, while not asking him to rearrange his entire life. So he told himself. But what Edward brushed off as a harmless affair soon became a dangerous labyrinth. Veronica was not satisfied with a mere fling, she wanted more. She was clever enough to keep her intentions well veiled at first, but her ambitions were grand. She visualized a future where she could make Edward her stepping stone, not just to money, but to the status that came with it. And Edward, so enthralled by the adrenaline of secrecy, was too blinded to see the trap being laid at his feet. Thus, in the hush of a mansion perched above the Pacific and in the penthouse suites of five-star hotels, seeds of betrayal were sown. Samantha felt the breeze of doubt stirring in her once quiet mind, but she had no real evidence. She only had that intangible sense that something, somehow, was not as it should be. A quickening of Edward's heartbeat when he glanced at his phone, a certain distraction in his eyes, a contrived excuse to stay late at the office. Samantha was perceptive, but she bided her time. She did not realize, at first, how close their lives were to toppling off a cliff. Nor did Edward, for that matter. Veronica, on the other hand, saw the entire future in her mind's eye, one that involved dethroning Samantha and stepping into her place. She only needed the perfect scandal to make it possible. Veronica Jones was born in a small Indiana town to hard-working parents who could only provide her with modest opportunities. From a young age, she resolved to elevate herself beyond the confines of her upbringing. She devoured magazines featuring glamorous women, wealthy tycoons, and the exotic corners of the world. Where others might have seen a fantasy, she saw a roadmap to her future. Determined, she moved to Los Angeles in her early 20s, used her quick wit and natural allure to connect with the city's young professionals, and gradually climbed the ladder in public relations. By the time she met Edward Harrington, Veronica was already known for her ability to manipulate public perception. She was the kind of PR consultant who could spin a fiasco into a triumphant comeback. Her skill was in reading people, their desires, their weaknesses. Edward, successful and socially prominent but craving something intangible, was precisely the kind of man she had studied for years. It wasn't enough for her to simply become an accessory in his life. She wanted to replace those who overshadowed her. She was a woman on a mission to secure not just a role by Edward's side, but total dominance over his world. Her plan began with subtle, emotional hooks. She would casually mention her struggles, painting herself as someone who overcame adversity. She flattered Edward's intelligence, empathized with his daily pressures. She was careful to never directly criticize Samantha, but she sprinkled seeds of envy and doubt, implying that maybe Samantha didn't truly understand him as she did. Yet, Veronica realized that merely winning Edward's heart wouldn't be enough to unseat Samantha. The Harrington marriage was, by outward appearances, stable, and Samantha had a respectable social circle. The philanthropic collaborations between Edward and Samantha were admired in the city's elite circles. No matter how enthralling Veronica was, as long as Samantha stood behind Edward, Veronica would remain an interloper. Hence, Veronica concocted a more sinister plan. She would orchestrate a scandal so big, so catastrophic, that Edward's marriage to Samantha would be irreparably shaken. Then, in the aftermath, Veronica would offer herself as the loving, supportive partner Edward desperately needed. It was a high-stakes gamble, requiring both cunning and cruelty. But Veronica had risked everything before, and she was prepared to do so again. The first hint of treachery revealed itself to Edward on a breezy afternoon. Veronica arranged a private lunch at a chic rooftop restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. With the skyline behind them, she teased him about becoming a family man. When would he finally walk away from his marriage? Edward quickly dismissed the question, cautioning that he would never want to humiliate Samantha, especially given her high standing in philanthropic circles. Veronica felt a flash of irritation. This was not the response she wanted, but she masked her anger with a laugh that tinkled like crystal and changed the subject. Over dessert, she skillfully probed him about his personal weaknesses. Did he ever fear scandalous rumors in the media? Did he worry about a competitor digging up dirt? Edward, clueless to her motives, found himself opening up about the various corporate predators who might want to tarnish his name to get ahead. Veronica nodded sympathetically, absorbing every word. She was building her arsenal step by step. Meanwhile, Samantha, unaware of the specifics but increasingly sure something was amiss, started observing her husband with more scrutiny. She noticed small stains on Edward's shirts that didn't match the color of her lipstick, faint traces of perfume she didn't own, or the occasional text message on his phone that seemed to bring a secret smile to his face. Samantha's heart clenched with apprehension, yet she kept her emotions in check. She would confront him eventually, but first she wanted tangible proof. She had no idea that Veronica's ambitions reached far beyond mere seduction. Samantha Harrington's old college friend, Lisa D'Amico, came to visit one afternoon. Lisa, an investigative journalist working for a reputable magazine in New York, had uncovered more than her fair share of hidden truths over the years. She had an uncanny sixth sense for detecting secrets, a skill she frequently used in her profession. The pair had once been almost inseparable, and though life had taken them to different coasts, they remained close in heart. Over coffee, Samantha confided in Lisa her growing unease about Edward's behavior. "He's been absent," she admitted, eyes downcast. "He denies any wrongdoing, but I can sense something's changed." Lisa, never one to mince words, asked pointed questions. "Does he have new female colleagues? Has anyone suspiciously attached themselves to him?" Samantha hesitated, remembering a woman named Veronica Jones that Edward had once mentioned in passing. At the time, the name meant little, but combined with the nagging sense that something was off, the memory leapt out. "Veronica Jones," Samantha said quietly, rolling the name around her tongue like a bitter pill. "She's a PR consultant. She's attractive, confident, and they've been spending time together, at least professionally." Lisa's gaze sharpened. "PR consultant, you say? I've come across a Veronica Jones in a few corporate exposes, someone known for spinning narratives to her advantage. But that could be a coincidence. Let me dig deeper." Later that evening, Lisa opened her laptop, searching through her archives. She discovered that a Veronica Jones had been involved with a high-stakes scandal in the entertainment industry some years back. Rumors suggested she'd orchestrated dramatic situations for personal gain, though nothing was proven. Lisa's instincts flared to life, the same name, the same line of work, and an uncanny pattern of hooking high-profile clients. Samantha, meanwhile, hovered between dread and desperation. She didn't want to believe Edward was crossing lines that would damage their marriage, but the facts were too glaring to ignore. The following morning, she mustered the courage to approach him directly. "Edward," she said, voice firm yet trembling, "I need to talk to you about something important." She kept her tone neutral, not wanting to raise an argument without proof. He looked up from his laptop, surprise crossing his face. "Of course," he said softly, motioning her to join him. Samantha felt a wave of conflicting emotions. She still loved him deeply, after all. "Is everything all right?" he pressed gently. She paused, searching his eyes for truth. "I've been feeling disconnected from you lately. I've noticed changes in your routine, your behavior, and I can't help wondering if it involves someone else." Edward stiffened, guilt flickering across his gaze. But he had grown adept at lying to himself, and thus to others. "Sam, you know how demanding business can be," he replied, forcing a small laugh. "I've been pouring myself into these new deals. There's no one else." Samantha studied him. There was a time she would have believed his every word without question. Yet now she felt a steeliness in her spine she hadn't realized she possessed. "We'll talk more later," she said, not pressing further. "I just wanted you to know I see something's off." Edward offered a reassuring smile, but it never reached his eyes. That night, Samantha confided her suspicions to Lisa, who offered a suggestion: "If you want to really see what's going on, hire a private investigator." Samantha hesitated. She was a proud woman, and the idea of prying into her husband's life didn't sit well with her. Yet, desperation for clarity overwhelmed her reservations. That night, after a lengthy conversation, she decided to contact someone. Lisa recommended a discreet but highly effective private investigator named Jack Griffin. Samantha felt a mix of fear and resolve. She was about to open a door that might never be closed. While Samantha and Lisa quietly prepared for the private investigation, Veronica Jones was refining her own sinister plan. She had begun researching substances that could induce disorientation and memory lapses, nothing too dangerous, but potent enough to compromise Edward. Her plan was borderline diabolical: drug Edward at a private event, stage incriminating photos or videos, and then threaten exposure unless he publicly severed ties with Samantha. It was a gamble that could easily backfire, but Veronica believed in her capacity to control outcomes. She studied everything from party drugs to prescription sedatives. Finally, she settled on a mild benzodiazepine that dissolved quickly in liquid. Administered in a calculated dose, it could make Edward appear delirious or possibly unconscious without posing a major health risk, at least in Veronica's amateur estimation. She felt only slight pangs of guilt, quickly brushed aside by her vision of living the life she deserved. To set the stage, she planned a lavish soiree under the guise of a corporate networking event. She would book the rooftop of a new luxury hotel in downtown Los Angeles, the kind of place where the city's movers and shakers gathered. Veronica had the perfect pretext: a product launch celebration for one of Edward's smaller tech ventures, for which she handled PR. It wouldn't be odd for her to host or for Edward to attend. Veronica's intention was to spike Edward's drink at the height of the evening, around the time paparazzi might be loitering near the entrance or in the wings, hoping to capture glimpses of high-profile guests. She had already reached out discreetly to a couple of freelance photographers she knew would do just about anything for the right price. She didn't need the mainstream press yet, just the potential of damaging photos that she could share strategically. Edward, blissfully unaware of the Black Widow spinning her web, found himself spending more late nights with Veronica. She would invite him for dinner or drinks, always in exclusive lounges, ensuring he was enveloped in an atmosphere that felt illicit yet thrilling. He told Samantha they were client meetings and late business strategies, growing more adept at weaving half-truths. Meanwhile, Jack Griffin, the private investigator, began tailing Edward at Samantha's request. He was a meticulous man, ex-military, with a knack for blending into crowds. Over the course of a week, he confirmed Edward's numerous rendezvous with Veronica. He documented their dinner dates, the hotels she booked, and the suspicious hush that surrounded their interactions. He noted how often Veronica checked over her shoulder, a sure sign she was anxious about being followed or discovered. Jack reported his findings to Samantha and Lisa, who conferred in whispered conversations in the late hours of the night. Samantha's heart clenched with each new detail, but she steeled herself. She told Lisa and Jack, "I need more than evidence of an affair. I have a feeling Veronica's up to something bigger." She recalled how Edward had once offhandedly mentioned Veronica's unrelenting ambition, how she always angled for more control in any project. Samantha's instincts whispered that an affair alone wouldn't be Veronica's endgame. With the so-called product launch celebration looming, Samantha decided to use the upcoming event to her advantage. "If she's going to make a move, it will be then," Lisa surmised. Samantha agreed. They began strategizing. Jack Griffin, with his experience in surveillance, was integral to the plan. He proposed setting up covert cameras in areas of the event venue. Samantha suggested enlisting a few trusted friends to help keep watch. Though her heart ached, Samantha pressed on with unwavering resolve. She loved Edward, but she was no fool. Her marriage and her reputation were on the line, and Veronica's machinations posed a grave threat to both. If all went according to plan, by the end of that event, Veronica Jones would find herself trapped in her own cunning game. The evening of the rooftop celebration arrived with all the glitz and glamour Veronica had meticulously orchestrated. The newly opened Skyline Pavilion Hotel, a soaring structure of polished glass and steel, was swathed in golden light. The rooftop terrace offered a panoramic view of downtown Los Angeles, a sparkling urban tapestry that made guests feel like royalty surveying their kingdom. Veronica had spared no expense. A string quartet played a modern repertoire near the entrance, waiters in black tie. Attire served trays of champagne, and an illuminated fountain centerpiece provided a luxurious focal point. Tech executives, media influencers, and minor celebrities roamed in designer gowns and sharp tuxedos. Veronica glided through the crowd in a figure-hugging emerald dress that turned heads at every corner. Edward arrived fashionably late, as Veronica had suggested. She wanted him to make an entrance that would draw everyone's attention. He wore a charcoal suit paired with a midnight blue tie, exuding an air of restrained power. Samantha, uninvited by Veronica's design, was conspicuously absent, fueling whispers among some guests about possible tensions between the Harringtons. Little did Veronica know, Samantha was indeed present, watching from a private balcony in the adjacent building, accompanied by Lisa and Jack Griffin. Through a pair of high-powered binoculars, Samantha could see the entire terrace. She could spot her husband's tall frame navigating the crowd, occasionally stopping to engage in polite conversation. Inside the event, Jack Griffin had placed covert mini-cameras along strategic points, near the bar, along the perimeter of the terrace, and at a lounge area where guests might slip away for quieter talks. The images fed into a secure recording device in the nearby building, where Samantha and Lisa watched everything unfold in real time. All around, the atmosphere crackled with the electric energy of a successful launch event. Tech demos showcased the newest product, an interactive platform rumored to revolutionize how businesses manage their online presence. Guests marveled at the sleek design and sipped expensive wine. Yet, overshadowing all the merriment was the tension that Veronica carried like a well-kept secret. She had the drug hidden in her satin clutch, and she was waiting for the perfect moment to slip it into Edward's drink. Just as the band transitioned to a lively waltz, Veronica approached Edward with 2 glasses of champagne, a dazzling smile on her lips. She handed him one, then raised her own in a toast. "To the future," she cooed, the double meaning unspoken but understood by them both. Edward, flattered, clinked glasses and took a sip. From the adjacent rooftop, Samantha's heart thundered in her chest. "Jack, can you see that?" she asked, voice taut. One of the camera feeds captured Veronica slipping a small packet into her own champagne glass. She made a show of swirling it gently, then reached out as though to pat Edward's shoulder in a playful gesture, during which, in one fluid motion, she switched her glass with Edward's. It was so well rehearsed and subtle that most onlookers wouldn't have noticed, but the cameras did. Samantha's grip on the binoculars tightened, her knuckles turned white. A swirl of rage and fear coursed through her veins. On screen, Edward took several more sips. He laughed with Veronica, oblivious to the betrayal in motion. Soon, his posture grew a little slack, his eyes a bit glazed. Veronica watched him intently, lips curving into a triumphant smile. Lisa exhaled shakily. "It's happening, Sam. She's doing it." Jack Griffin, who had been milling around the event in the guise of a guest, discreetly positioned himself closer to Edward. He was ready to intervene if the situation became dangerous. Samantha shut her eyes for a brief moment, summoning the strength to witness what was about to transpire. The plan was to let Veronica incriminate herself on camera, to catch her in the act of staging whatever scandal she intended to produce. Only then could Samantha reveal the evidence and exonerate Edward. It was a perilous strategy, but there was no other way to prove Veronica's malicious intent. Within minutes, the drug began to take effect. Edward swayed slightly, and his words slurred when he attempted to greet a fellow tech entrepreneur. Veronica, feigning concern, slid an arm around his waist, guiding him toward a more secluded corner of the terrace. Cameras, intentionally stationed by Veronica's hired paparazzi, began to flash. She pretended to shield Edward, but each movement was calculated to deliver the perfect, scandalous shot. To any casual observer, it looked like Edward was either heavily intoxicated or in the throes of some emotional collapse, both of which reflected poorly on a man of his standing. On the adjacent rooftop, Samantha and Lisa watched in horror as Veronica led Edward behind a row of potted palms at the terrace's edge. Nearby, a few guests caught glimpses of the unfolding scene, some whispering, others snapping clandestine photos with their phones. Veronica's orchestrated spectacle was in full swing. Jack Griffin followed them, keeping his distance. He positioned himself near the palm trees, pretending to admire the city lights. He could hear Veronica cooing words of faux sympathy. "Oh, Edward, let me help you. Don't worry, I'll take care of you." She stroked his cheek, guiding him toward a chaise lounge that had been placed there for ambience. Suddenly, one of Veronica's pre-arranged paparazzi popped up, camera clicking away. Veronica didn't even feign surprise. She gave the photographer a look that said, "Got what you need." The flashbulb lit Edward's bewildered expression, capturing the moment he appeared heavily compromised while Veronica hovered protectively over him. "Perfect," Veronica whispered, loud enough for Edward, but not for the camera. Her face wore an expression of vindication, as if she'd just checkmated a game of chess. That was Jack's cue. He stepped forward abruptly, wearing a concerned face that doubled as a facade. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked Edward, while glaring at the paparazzo. "Who are you? This area is private." Veronica masked her annoyance expertly. "He's just having a bit too much to drink," she said, affecting worry. "He needs some fresh air." The paparazzo, capturing a final flurry of photos, slinked off, satisfied with his bounty. Edward mumbled incoherently. The world was spinning for him. He recognized Jack Griffin vaguely. Didn't he see him around Samantha once? But his mind was too fogged to piece things together. All he wanted was to lie down. Meanwhile, Samantha and Lisa shared a sharp glance. "We have enough," Lisa murmured, checking the camera feeds that had recorded the entire drugging sequence. Samantha set her jaw, adrenaline surging. It was time to spring the trap that would confirm Veronica's guilt before a larger audience. She'd already arranged a contingency plan with the event staff. A loyal friend of Samantha, an event manager named Christine Park, stood by, ready to escort security or call attention to the fiasco if necessary. Down on the terrace, Veronica motioned for one of the event staff to help her move Edward inside, presumably to a private suite she'd booked in advance. The staffer, following her instructions, nodded. Jack Griffin stayed close, determined to record every movement. On the other side, Christine Park quietly signaled the hotel's security team, instructing them to converge on Veronica's suite once they saw a specific signal, a text message reading green light. Samantha felt her chest constrict as she witnessed her husband practically being carried away. She reminded herself that Jack was right there and that they had medical staff on standby if anything went wrong. Despite the swirl of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak, she held on to one unwavering resolve. After this night, Veronica Jones would never again threaten her marriage or her peace. The path from the rooftop terrace led to a corridor of private suites reserved for VIP guests. Veronica maneuvered Edward with a combination of manipulative tenderness and brisk efficiency. Jack Griffin kept a measured distance, ensuring he wouldn't lose them. Two unsuspecting hotel staffers helped guide Edward, now barely conscious, into Suite 1902, a lavish room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the neon sprawl of Los Angeles. Once inside, Veronica dismissed the hotel staff, feigning gratitude. "Thank you, I can take it from here," she said, in a hushed, urgent tone. Relieved to relinquish responsibility, the staffers backed out, offering well wishes to a clearly unwell Edward. They closed the door, leaving Veronica, Edward, and Jack still pretending to be a concerned colleague alone. Veronica rounded on Jack. "What are you doing here?" she demanded in a whisper. Suspicion flickered in her eyes. She hadn't accounted for him. "I'm just worried about Edward," Jack replied, his voice cool. "He's the face of the company, after all. This is bad PR. Let me call a doctor." He reached for his phone, but Veronica grabbed his wrist. "No," she hissed. "No doctors, no drama." She forced a tight laugh. "He's just had one too many. I'll let him rest, and then he can head home. No need to make this a scandal." Jack gave her a probing look. Under the bright lights of the suite, Veronica's veneer was cracking. She seemed tense. Her pupils dilated not just from the night's excitement, but from the knowledge that she was walking a perilous line. The paparazzo was meant to capture scandalous photos and vanish, not linger. And now this unknown man was meddling. She needed him gone. "I'll stay until he recovers," Jack insisted, making a point to appear naive. "He's an important colleague." Veronica's lips tightened. She considered her options. If she pushed too hard, she'd look suspicious. But she needed privacy to orchestrate any further incriminating evidence, perhaps something more tangible to use against Edward. Maybe photographs of them in a compromising situation. She had planned meticulously, bringing a small hidden camera in her purse, but that required Edward to be alone with her. "Fine," she said sweetly. "Get him some water from the bar over there." She pointed to a marble-topped counter. Jack nodded obligingly, walking across the room to fetch a glass of water, though he had no intention of giving her the solitude she craved. In a moment of cunning desperation, Veronica stepped back to her bag, palming a tiny camera device no larger than a pack of gum. If she could stage just a few close-up shots, her leaning over Edward, lips parted, clothing rumpled, perhaps an angle that implied intimacy, she'd have powerful blackmail material. She could claim Edward forced himself on her while drunk, or that they had an affair of unstoppable passion. Either narrative would be devastating for Edward and humiliating for Samantha. Yet, before Veronica could position the camera, Jack turned around. She froze, hiding the device behind her back. Edward, sprawled on the chaise lounge, groaned. Samantha, he mumbled in a half-conscious plea. "Samantha can't help you now," Veronica muttered under her breath, bitterness flaring. Jack offered Edward the water, then turned to Veronica, stepping closer. In one swift, unexpected move, he grasped the device from her hand. His reflexes were honed from years of investigative work. Veronica gasped, her facade crumbling. "What are you doing with this?" Jack asked icily. He recognized it as a small digital camera with high-resolution capabilities. "You planning on making a little home movie?" Veronica's eyes blazed with anger and fear. Her perfect plan was teetering on the brink of collapse, undone by this unassuming man who refused to leave. She had to pivot. She let out a theatrical cry, flinging herself away from Jack and shrieking, "Get away from me! Help! He's hurting me!" She hoped to lure security or staff to twist the narrative in her favor, but it was too late. The door burst open, revealing Christine Park and two security personnel. Samantha and Lisa stood right behind them. Cameras from both Jack and the security team were rolling, capturing Veronica's meltdown. Samantha rushed to Edward's side, brushing his hair back from his forehead, tears brimming in her eyes as she saw the state he was in. In that moment, Veronica realized all her illusions were shattered. She was surrounded, caught red-handed with the camera, with no plausible explanation. Security had footage of her cry for help, which was obviously contrived. She showed no bruises or sign of actual distress. On the contrary, Jack's calm demeanor spoke volumes. Samantha's voice, low and trembling with controlled fury, cut through the tense silence. "Veronica Jones, you've gone too far. We have everything on film from the moment you drugged my husband to now. The game is over." Veronica stared at Samantha, her expression a mixture of shock, rage, and a last vestige of haughty defiance. She let out a mirthless laugh. "So, this was your plan all along? A sting operation?" she spat, tossing her hair back. Samantha gently placed Edward's head on a plush pillow, reassuring him in a soft voice that everything would be all right. Then she rose to her full height, meeting Veronica's glare with unwavering resolve. "Yes," she said simply. "I couldn't let you ruin him or us without a fight." Christine Park stepped forward, brandishing her phone. "We alerted the police. They'll be here soon. Possession of a controlled substance, intent to harm, blackmail, there's a whole list of potential charges." Veronica's eyes flicked to the door, then back to Samantha. She weighed her chances of sprinting for an escape, but the two security guards stood blocking any attempt to flee. Panic rippled across her features for the first time. "You don't understand," she seethed, voice trembling. "Edward and he loves me, and I love him." She pointed accusingly at Samantha. "You've kept him chained in a loveless marriage." Samantha cut her off, voice steady but smouldering with controlled emotion. "Don't you dare. My marriage isn't perfect, no marriage is, but you will not rewrite history to play the victim." She threw a glance at Lisa, who nodded, stepping forward with a laptop that displayed real-time footage from the rooftop cameras. "We have you on tape, exchanging the champagne glasses, spiking his drink, coordinating with paparazzi. It's all there." She clicked a few keys, and Veronica's face turned ashen at the sight of her own actions, magnified on the laptop screen. Jack Griffin added, "We also have evidence linking you to previous attempts at blackmail in other industries. You've built quite the career out of orchestrating these crises, haven't you, Miss Jones?" Veronica opened her mouth, words failing her as she realized the full extent of her exposure. For all her cunning, she hadn't expected Samantha's countermove. Her carefully constructed tower of illusions was tumbling down. Outside, the faint wail of approaching sirens signaled the arrival of law enforcement. Edward stirred on the chaise lounge, groaning as he tried to open his eyes. Samantha rushed to his side, grasping his hand in hers. "Edward, it's me. Everything is going to be all right. Just stay with me," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. He tried to focus on his wife's face, confusion etched across his features. "Sam, what's happening?" She gently stroked his cheek. "We'll explain everything soon. For now, just rest. We have people here to help you." Veronica, cornered and out of time, attempted one last act of manipulation. She marched over to Edward, ignoring everyone else. "Edward, tell them," she insisted, voice cracking. "Tell them you wanted me, that you're leaving her for me." She sounded more desperate than ever, tears and fury melding into an ugly cocktail of emotion. Edward blinked, still battling the drug's effects. "I," he murmured, his voice unsteady. In that moment, his gaze flicked to Samantha, her tearful eyes, her trembling lips. Something within him shifted. He might have lied to himself before, but now, drugged and defenseless, only truth remained. "Samantha," he whispered, forging through the haze. He reached for her hand. "I'm so sorry." The heartbreak and love interlaced in Samantha's gaze told its own story. She pressed her palm to his. "We'll talk about it later. Right now, I just want you safe." Behind them, the door swung open and two police officers entered. Veronica involuntarily stepped backward. Her eyes darted about, seeking any exit, any means of escape, but found none. The police officers, a man and a woman in crisp uniforms, surveyed the scene. One noticed Edward's groggy state while the other honed in on Veronica, whose trembling hand still clutched the small camera device. Lisa and Christine rushed to hand over the video evidence they had compiled on their phones and the laptop. Jack Griffin calmly explained the sequence of events, from the rooftop party to the moment they all entered the suite. Veronica, visibly shaken, tried one last desperate ploy. "This is a misunderstanding," she exclaimed, struggling to maintain composure. "That camera, it's mine, but for my PR work." "I never drugged him. He was drinking all night. They're framing me." But the officers remained impassive. One of them, Officer Johnson, viewed the footage from the hidden cameras, which clearly showed Veronica spiking Edward's drink. The second officer, Officer Morales, looked to Edward, who was being examined by on-site paramedics. Samantha hovered protectively, tears glistening in her eyes. "We have enough evidence to arrest you for attempted assault and other charges," Officer Johnson told Veronica firmly. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Veronica's face twisted in denial. "You can't do this. He's my lover, my fiancé. He would never press charges against me." She lunged toward Edward, but the officers quickly restrained her. Samantha found an unexpected calm settle over her in that moment, watching as Veronica's venomous lies unraveled in real time. In a surreal twist, she almost felt pity for the woman, someone so consumed by ambition and desperation that she'd ruin lives, including her own, to fulfill a twisted fantasy. Lisa stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Samantha's shoulder. "You did what you had to do," she murmured. "Edward is safe now, and that's what matters." Paramedics finished their initial assessment of Edward. One of them, a kind-faced man named Daniel Fletcher, explained, "We suspect a sedative in his system. He'll need hospital evaluation, but his vitals are stable. It doesn't appear life-threatening, fortunately." Samantha's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. As Edward was placed on a gurney for transport, his hand found Samantha's and held on tightly. His eyes, though still clouded by the drug's influence, were filled with guilt and remorse. But for now, Samantha only squeezed back, offering silent forgiveness. There would be time enough for reckoning later. Veronica, on the other hand, was led away in handcuffs, her face streaked with tears and fury. She locked eyes with Samantha in a final glare of hatred, but Samantha refused to look away. She needed to see the ending to this nightmare, to be certain it was real. Jack Griffin exhaled a long breath once the police had escorted Veronica out. "I'll gather all the footage and documents, pass them to the authorities," he told Samantha. "You might need to testify, but I think it'll be pretty straightforward," Samantha nodded. The surge of adrenaline that had fueled her now drained away, leaving her trembling. She reached for Lisa, who enveloped her in a hug. "Thank you," Samantha murmured. "Both of you. I couldn't have done this without you." Lisa gave her a supportive smile. "That's what friends are for." As paramedics and police officers bustled around them, the suite that once glittered with Veronica's illusions of grandeur lay in disarray. Half-empty champagne glasses, scattered party favors, and the lingering scent of Edward's near downfall contrasted sharply with the swirl of medics and law enforcement. In that chaos, Samantha found an odd sense of peace. Veronica's hold over Edward was broken, and the Harringtons could now face the truth, no matter how painful. Samantha rode with Edward in the ambulance to Cedar-Sinai Hospital. The paramedics had stabilized him, placing him on the fourth fluids to flush out the sedative. Edward drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally murmuring apologies or calling her name. Samantha gently stroked his hair, her heart torn between anger, hurt, and a deep, unyielding love. At the hospital, Edward was taken in for a series of tests. While waiting, Samantha stared blankly at the sterile white walls, the beep of medical machinery forming a strange lullaby that mirrored the turmoil in her mind. Lisa and Jack arrived later, after giving their statements to the police. They found Samantha in a small waiting area, hugging herself against the chill of the hospital's air conditioning. "How is he?" Lisa asked, sitting down beside her friend. "He's stable," Samantha replied, voice subdued. "They're running toxicology tests. The doctor said he should be fine. Physically, anyway." Jack chimed in softly. "After he's released, I imagine the police will want to question him about Veronica." Samantha nodded, eyes downcast. "Yes, and we'll cooperate." It's important to prove her guilt beyond any doubt. An hour later, a nurse emerged, beckoning Samantha into Edward's private room. He was propped up on pillows, pale but lucid. He met her gaze with an expression of profound remorse. Samantha approached slowly, unsure of what to say. She wanted to rail at him for betraying her, for lying, for allowing Veronica's presence in their life. Yet, seeing him frail, she remembered her vows of love, the bright days before suspicion darkened their union. Edward took a shaky breath. "Sam, I don't know how to start apologizing." She pulled a chair close to his bed, taking his hand. "Then maybe just start with the truth," she said quietly. "How did this happen, Edward?" His voice trembled. "I was stupid, Sam. I felt like we were drifting apart. Veronica, she was seductive and exciting. It never seemed like a big deal at first, just a rush. I didn't think she'd go this far. And I'm ashamed to say I didn't even see how manipulative she was. I was blinded by my own restlessness." Samantha's eyes glistened with tears, but she forced them back. "You betrayed my trust, Edward. You broke what we had." He squeezed her hand, tears escaping down his cheeks. "I know, and I'm sorry. I will do anything, counseling, a separation, time away, whatever you need, I'll do it." Samantha closed her eyes, her thoughts whirling. "I don't know what the future holds for us," she admitted. "I need time to process all of this. But I can't ignore the fact that I almost lost you, or that you almost lost everything, because of your poor choices and her evil scheme." Edward nodded weakly, too tired to argue. "I understand." They sat in silence, letting the gravity of the event settle over them. Finally, Samantha rose to leave, promising to return once he'd rested. "Just focus on getting better," she said softly. "We'll decide what comes next together, or maybe apart, but we'll figure it out." Outside, Lisa offered Samantha a concerned hug. Samantha leaned into the embrace, her tears finally slipping free. She still loved Edward, but trust was fragile, and it had been shattered. For now, all she could do was take it day by day, step by step. The next few days brought a whirlwind of legalities and media storms. Veronica Jones's arrest became a hot topic in the local news cycle, splashed across tabloids and social media. Paparazzi had photos of Edward appearing incoherent at the party, fueling gossip about what really happened on the Skyline Pavilion Hotel rooftop. Fortunately, the truth emerged quickly. Lisa D'Amico, with her network of journalist connections, released a meticulously documented expose detailing Veronica's plot, the hidden camera, the spiked drink, the orchestrated photographs. Law enforcement corroborated the story, confirming that Veronica had been charged with assault, attempted blackmail, and other related crimes. Thanks to Jack Griffin's evidence, the district attorney had a strong case. Edward, once discharged from the hospital, gave a public statement expressing regret for his personal failings, but clarifying that he had been the victim of a malicious scheme. He publicly thanked his wife, Samantha, for saving him from irreparable harm. Samantha stood behind him during the press conference, poised yet reserved, her emotions masked by a calm dignity. Despite the outpouring of media attention, Samantha had no desire to bask in the drama. She accepted interviews with major news outlets, only to ensure the narrative was accurate, never to seek personal vindication. She stated simply that she hoped justice would be served and that the Harrington family needed privacy to heal. Behind the scenes, Edward and Samantha began marriage counseling. Though their relationship was bruised, they both realized they weren't ready to throw away years of commitment. Each session brought tears, confessions, and the painful unearthing of buried insecurities. Samantha discovered how Edward had felt neglected whenever she immersed herself in her art advocacy, while Edward learned how deeply she valued honesty and loyalty. Meanwhile, Veronica languished in custody, Her lawyer attempted to spin a tale of mutual involvement, but the extensive evidence, including the footage of her drugging Edward, made any defense difficult. She faced a strong likelihood of prison time. Former clients distanced themselves from her, citing the scandal's toxicity. She had become a pariah in the PR world. Lisa resumed her life in New York, content with having helped unearth another scandal. She and Samantha stayed in close contact, texting often to check in on each other's well-being. Jack Griffin, his job done, quietly moved on to other cases, though he promised Samantha he'd be ready to testify if needed. Samantha found herself oscillating between relief that Veronica was no longer a threat and heartbreak over the shattered illusions of her marriage. Her once idyllic view of Edward as a devoted husband was replaced by a more complicated reality. He was flawed, capable of betrayal, yet deeply remorseful and yearning to atone. In a particularly candid counseling session, Samantha confronted Edward. The first need to know, if Veronica hadn't drugged you, would you have eventually left me for her? Tell me the truth. Edward's eyes flooded with tears. No, Sam, I was never going to leave you. I was a coward who wanted excitement on the side, but I was never ready to lose our life together. And that was unfair to both you and Veronica. The first see that now. Though it hurt, Samantha believed him. Sometimes love isn't about illusions of perfection. It's about seeing the flaws and deciding if you can still fight for each other. Weeks passed, and a sense of normalcy began to return. The media frenzy subsided, shifting to new scandals and fresh controversies. The Harrington name remained in the spotlight for a while. Some business partners hesitated, worried about reputational damage. But Edward worked tirelessly to rebuild trust, both at home and in his professional circles. Samantha, meanwhile, threw herself into philanthropic projects, channeling her emotional turmoil into actionable kindness. She organized a new art exhibition in partnership with a local youth center, aiming to raise funds and awareness for underprivileged talent. Standing amid bright canvases and sculptures, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was who she was, an advocate for creativity and passion, someone who found solace in the transformative power of art. At home, Edward took small, deliberate steps to mend the bonds he'd broken. He'd surprise Samantha with her favorite tea in the morning, leave thoughtful notes around the house, or join her for evening walks on the beach near their Malibu residence. He confided in her about the pressures he'd felt to constantly expand his empire. In turn, she admitted she'd sometimes become too absorbed in her personal interests, leaving him feeling unappreciated. Though these revelations stung, each honest conversation brought them closer to forging a new dynamic, one built on transparency. Eventually, the day of Veronica's trial arrived. Samantha and Edward found themselves in a hushed courtroom, side by side, testifying against the woman who had nearly destroyed them. Veronica, thinner and more subdued, sat at the defendant's table, her once captivating poise replaced by defeat. The evidence was overwhelming. The video footage, the testimonies from multiple witnesses, and the forensic toxicology reports. The trial was swift. Veronica was found guilty of multiple charges, including assault with a controlled substance and attempted blackmail. The judge sentenced her to a prison term, stating that her actions displayed a calculated disregard for human life and dignity. As they led her away, Veronica shot Edward a haunted look, as though still incredulous he had spurned her. Then she was gone, swallowed by the legal system. Outside the courthouse, Samantha and Edward faced the press for the final time. Reporters thrust microphones at them, clamoring for statements. Samantha, maintaining her composure, said, "We respect the court's decision and hope this outcome brings closure. We ask for privacy and understanding as we move forward in our lives." That night, back in their mansion, the tension that had gripped them for so long began to ease. Samantha caught Edward's eye over a glass of wine, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. They had survived something extraordinary and terrifying. Trust was still fragile, but they were both willing to nurture it, day by day, choice by choice. In a quiet moment, Edward held Samantha's hands in his. "Thank you," he whispered, "for fighting for me even when I didn't deserve it." Samantha's eyes glossed with tears, and she nodded. "I did it for us," she replied softly, leaning into him. "Let's never forget how close we came to losing everything." Months later, the Harringtons found themselves in a very different place, both literally and metaphorically. They decided to spend a long weekend at their Tuscan villa, a timeless stone estate nestled among rolling vineyards and olive groves. With the golden Italian sun shining down, Samantha strolled through the rows of grapevines, brushing her fingers across the verdant leaves, absorbing the serenity of the moment. Edward walked beside her, carrying a wicker basket for fresh produce. He inhaled the sweet, earthy scent of the land. "This place feels like home," he murmured, "like we can breathe again." They had been attending marriage counseling regularly. The sessions were still challenging, but both felt it was worth the effort. In Tuscany, far from the city lights and scrutiny, they found a haven to reflect on the past without being suffocated by it. Samantha had even reached a point where she could talk about Veronica without feeling a surge of fury or heartbreak. She was starting to see her as a symptom of deeper problems that had existed between her and Edward. One evening, they shared a candlelit dinner on the villa's terrace. A soft breeze carried the aroma of rosemary and lavender. Over homemade pasta and local Chianti, they talked about the future. Edward mentioned scaling back on new business expansions, focusing instead on maintaining a sustainable model that allowed him more time for family and personal growth. Samantha spoke of hosting art therapy retreats in the villa, inviting children from underprivileged backgrounds to explore creativity in a nurturing environment. After the meal, they wandered to the edge of the estate, where cypress trees stood tall against the fading light. The sky was streaked with hues of pink and orange, like a living canvas. Samantha turned to Edward, her eyes reflecting the sunset's glow. "We can start over," she said, softly, a hint of a question in her tone. "Not forget everything, but learn and be better." He nodded, gently touching her cheek. "Yes, I think we already have started." They shared a slow, tender kiss, one that felt like a promise renewed. Samantha rested her head on his shoulder, gazing at the horizon. In that quiet moment, she felt hopeful. The emotional scars wouldn't vanish overnight, but the wounds were healing. They had chosen each other, and that choice carried a potent magic all its own. In the days that followed, they realized that their relationship, though once battered by secrets and betrayal, had become more honest and deliberate than it had ever been. They communicated openly, expressing gratitude and vulnerability in ways they hadn't dared to before. The million little cracks in their marriage had been mended, not patched over with illusions, but repaired with the raw mortar of truth and accountability. Their story wasn't perfect, it remained a work in progress. However, the darkest chapter was over, and a new one was beginning. In that chapter, they would hold hands as they faced life's uncertainties together, forging a love that was no longer naive, but deeper and stronger for having survived a storm. And so concludes our tale of betrayal, cunning, and ultimate redemption. The Harringtons emerged from a brutal storm that nearly shattered their marriage, only to forge a bond tempered by honesty and renewed devotion. Veronica Jones, driven by greed and malice, found her schemes undone by Samantha's unwavering resolve and her own lust for power. In the end, what saved Edward wasn't just Samantha's clever plan, but love and loyalty strong enough to fight the shadows lurking in high society's hidden corners. Their journey reminds us that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt provided both hearts are willing to do the work. Thank you for joining us in this real-life drama fiction. If you enjoyed the twists and tension of this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more riveting tales where secrets unravel, love perseveres, and justice triumphs. Until next time, dear viewers, keep your eyes open and your hearts strong.